All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. We apologize for being a couple of minutes late. That was my fault. Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, the J.R. Stewart, man with infinite intelligence, and my partner in crime.
I'm your co-host, D. Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. Jimmy, it is Wednesday night, June the 12th, 2024. And if
So
it is Wednesday night,
it's certainly Black Men Speak. So if you haven't already, please hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new shows are uploaded, which is every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to help us with the algorithm. And Tom, I just want to announce that we are streaming on 5 platforms live, which is YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, X, and Instagram live. So you can catch our show on any of those, and we actually get quite a few people who catch us on these other platforms besides YouTube. Tom, I know we got a jam-packed show tonight, and we haven't had one of these intellectual discussion shows since we changed our format to cover current events. But every now and then it is good to go back and to talk about, have a deep discussion, deep dive discussion on intellectual matter, because if we don't, if we're not the keepers of truth here at the time of the arbiters of truth, who else is going to bring it to the people besides us and Black Men Speak, who are not afraid to tell the truth?
true that, Jimmy. True that, regardless of whose feelings are hurt. So let's go ahead and get started. We
Let's
only
get
have
started.
we have a few things to discuss tonight, but they're going to be very, very deep, impactful, and entertaining, folks. But before we do that, we have got to at least talk about our birthday babies for this upcoming week, for our June babies. First, we will start out with a face that should be very familiar to anyone who loves watching the small screen. This is a sister who has had a 7-decade career on the small screen and a few on the big screen as well. Miss Marla Gibbs, who is turning 93 this week on June the 14th. She is an actress,
Wow.
singer, comedian, writer, and television producer, Jimmy. Most known for us, Jimmy, is, of course, her role as Florence Johnston on
Yes.
the Jeffersons, Jimmy. One of my favorite shows from back in the day. She received 5 nominations for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. Also starred, Jimmy, you might remember this face here, back when we actually had a few families on the television.
I do.
Outstanding saw a role in the sitcom 2027, which lasted for about
227, yes. With
exactly.
Jackie.
Won 7 NAACP Image Awards. Also played supporting actress in a couple of movies, Jimmy, including Meteor Man, The Brothers, and Medea's Witness Protection Program. And of course, finally, she is still at it today at the tender age of the early 90s, Jimmy. Began playing Olivia
Happy birthday.
Price on the daytime drama Days of Our Lives. Jimmy, I don't watch, of course, soap operas anymore, but I did not know that she was on the more current role of Days in Our Lives. So happy birthday to you, coming up
Happy birthday.
on June the 14th, and still at it, going on 93 years old, Jimmy.
Wow.
All right, next, Jimmy, we have someone, anybody who is in the music or the rap game knows this face. He has a birthday coming up. One O'Shea
Oh,
Jackson,
you.
also known as Ice Cube, will be turning 55 years old, Jimmy, on June the 15th. Rapper, songwriter, actor, and film producer. Most folks, of course, knew him in his early years when he was with NWA, of course, with their
Right.
groundbreaking album Straight Outta Compton in 1988, where he, of course, performed with some of the most notable rappers during that time and really created the West Coast rap genre, as some of us may be aware of that. Later, he came out with a couple of rap solo albums, America's Most Wanted, Death Certificate, and The Predator, one of my favorites, in 1992, where he won critical acclaim as a solo rapper, and of course also won some commercial success, made some pretty good money was inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with NWA in 2016. And then Jimmy, after that, launched a career in movies in the early 1990s. Some of you may remember him playing Doughboy in Boys in the Hood, directed by John Singleton. Co-wrote and starred in the 1995 comedy film Friday, and made his directorial debut in the 1998 film The Players Club.
Mm-hmm.
As of 2020, I have no idea, has appeared in over 40 films, including Three Kings, the Barbershop series that we, of course, aware of, in 21 and 22 Jump Street. And then, of course, also was an executive producer of the 2015 biopic film Straight Outta Compton. So,
Did you mention the Friday movies?
yes, I did. The Friday series as
Okay.
well. So June 15th, baby, turning 50, 55. So if you have him in your Rolodex, make sure you give him a holler. Tell him happy birthday. All right, Jimmy. For those of you who are some old school music fans, you may know this face. He has a birthday on June the 16th. Eddie Levert. He'll be turning 82 years old this upcoming week. Jimmy, 82 years old.
That's Gerald's father, right?
Yes, sir. That is Gerald's father. But most folks who really know him from the OJs.
OJs, yes.
Born right outside of Birmingham, Alabama, in Bessemer. Was raised in Canton, Ohio. Started singing in the church where he got a little notoriety, and then became a recognized voice, and then joined a group with some of his high school buddies, Walter Williams, William Powell, Bob Massey, and Bill Isles, forming the group The Triumphs. Eventually, they ended up getting a record deal that turned into what we know as the OJs. And that's really where you heard that voice that is so notable of course, of Eddie Levert. Their debut item, Let Me Touch You, went number 3 in R&B, including Loving You, which, of course, was a beautiful song. Some babies were made to that one. And
my favorite is For the Love of Money.
Yep. Became a number 1 hit in the summer of 1987. Of course, he had 2 sons that are well-known, Gerald Levert, and, of course, his other son, both of them of which, unfortunately, died in very early death under unfortunate circumstances, Jimmy. But at the end of the day, Eddie Levert is still out there making it happen, Jimmy. In 2011, he received the Trumpet Lifetime Achievement Award. And throughout his career, the OJs have released 10 gold albums with 9 going platinum and 10 number 1 hits. So for those of you out there who are Levert fans, the original OG Levert, Eddie Levert, wish him a happy birthday on
Happy birthday, brother.
June the 16th. And last, certainly definitely not least, you have this beautiful, talented, and famous young woman who will be having a birthday on June the 17th, Miss Venus Williams, who will be turning 44 on June the 17th. Of course, one of the best women's tennis players of all time, former world number 1 singles and doubles players, won 7 Grand Slam singles titles, 5 at Wimbledon and 2 in the U.S. Open. Reached her first major final in 1997 at the U.S. Open. In 2000 and 2001, claimed the Wimbledon and the U.S. Open title. First reached the singles world number 1 ranking in 2002, becoming the first African-American woman to do so in the Open era, and only the second since Althea Gibson. The Williams sisters, of course, are credited with ushering in a new era of power and athleticism among women tennis players. And with 49 WTA Tour singles titles, Williams has the most singles titles among active players. And she is the only active player to have reached the singles finals of all 4 majors. She ranks second only behind Serena Williams in the all-time career prize money, earning over $42 million, Jimmy. And by the way, Serena has earned $94.8 million, almost $95 million in earnings, Jimmy. So happy birthday to Venus Williams. Yes, it is. Has a birthday on June 17th. Of course, want to wish you the best of luck. Enjoy this this year, your new birthday, and thank you for all the great memories. So
Okay.
that is it. That is it for today. Our birthday babies.
Our birthday. Okay. Well,
All
it's
right,
time
Jimmy.
for Black music history.
Yes, it
Uh,
is. Yes, it is.
so let me give you the rules real quick. We're going to play a clip. The clips are a little shorter because our co-host, Mr. T.D. Duncan III, insisted that the sample does not include the name or the title of the song. So we have to take great care to edit that out. But anyway, these are still songs and artists that you should know. And so for the first person who enters the name of the song and the name of the artist, or either one, first in the chat line, you get a point for each. So one person can, if you're fast enough, you can earn 2 points, and or we could split it and award 1 point for the artist, 1 point for the title of the song, and then at the end of the year, whoever have the most points, we'll figure out a nice prize to send to you. Um, so with that being said,
Get those
let's
fingers
do
ready.
our first song, and this is a group. So hint, hint. So get your fingers ready. Be at the keyboard. Because here we go.
Mother gazing out of the window, staring at a sun that she just can't touch. And if at any time he's in the jam, she'll be by his side. But he doesn't realize it hurts her so much. Listen to me. Don't.
Okay. Whoa, that was fast. All right. So the winner for both the group and the song is Miss Carol Wilson, TLC Waterfalls. Boy, they came in fast.
What? Go. Wow. Any close seconds?
Yep, we had Miss Dominique Vinings came in with Waterfalls, the title, and then Uncle Asar came in with TLC, and then of course the title. So it was a very close second.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, congratulations to Miss Carol, our double point winner, and we will do our second song for the show at about a quarter till. So hang in there. For those of you who close second, you get a chance to redeem yourself. So with that being said, Tom, let's do what we do best, which is bring news, information, and knowledge to those who watch our show. And we promise that this is going to be a really good topic, something that we don't talk about enough, Tom, which is a fraud that's being committed on the world stage on a global level, and not just currently, but this fraud has been operating and committing against humanity for thousands of years, for at least 7,000 years I know of. And we're going to expose it here on this show and see if we can shed some light on the true people of humanity, the mother and father of humanity, and let's see if we can align history correctly as opposed to the way it's being taught and information is being spread today. What do you say? Let's get started.
All right, Jimmy, let's get this party started right.
Okay. So the fraud that we're talking about is, Tom, if you notice that every image out there, whether it's Jesus, the white Jesus in the church, God up in heaven, all of the angels, all of the pharaohs in Africa, all of the important kings, everybody who's here, somebody, even the caveman and the cave woman, Tom, are all white.
Well, yeah, Jimmy, and I guess when you consider the source of most of the history that we get on, of course, in our schools, whether we're talking about higher education, whether we're talking about academia or in our high schools, of course, come from pretty much the same source of propaganda, so to speak, Jimmy. So, whether we're talking about the United States, whether we're talking about Europe, we're pretty much talking about the same thing.
Tom, do you remember a few years ago we found an intact caveman? What was his name? I think do you remember his name?
I do not.
Okay, I think a couple of shows ago you mentioned it. But anyway, this was he was found in the mountains of Italy, and he was frozen in ice.
Yeah,
He
we
had
talked about
died.
this.
Yeah, he had died from a puncture wound. It seemed maybe he was fighting, but his skeleton was frozen in the ice time for over almost 20,000 years. So one of the oldest fossils that we have found of a European. And I remember all of the fanfare. And then when the reconstruction artists would kind of tell you what he looked like, 'cause, skin's all dried up and from the elements and from being frozen all that time. So when they reconstructed him, guess what? They reconstructed a white caveman, Tom. In
Of
fact,
course.
I can't think of a image of a caveman. Now, if you're talking early ape man, that's different. But the actual Homo sapien caveman, Tom, they're all depicted as white.
Agreed.
And so, of course, at that time, we couldn't really do a DNA test on them because the technology to extract DNA from fossilized bones didn't exist. So we just didn't know how. The skin wasn't intact enough. Of course, there's no blood. The organs all dried up. So how do we find anything about this skeleton? But now we do have the ability to extract DNA, TNA, RNA from bones, fossilized bones. And Tom, you may be shocked, or maybe you're not shocked, but some of
No.
our audience may be shocked to find out that the oldest caveman that we found in Europe was black.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, Jimmy, when we look at history, and for those of you who are avid readers who read anything about history, you read anything about anthropology. I mean, even Louis Leakey in the I forgot whether it was the late '60s or the early '70s, the earliest remains that he had found, of course, of human type. Of course, I believe it was in Kenya. They were
Yeah.
black. Of course, most people ignore his findings because, of course, they don't want to acknowledge that it's possible that the earliest humankind actually came from a black mother. But I'll let you keep moving on that.
Yes. So you're right about the leaky finds, Tom. And you know what? It seemed like that whole science, anthropology, have been looking for this missing link. And somehow I think there's sort of like an insipid desire to prove what's not provable, Tom. I think it's becoming
And Jimmy,
obvious.
Uncle Asar said that caveman that we were talking about last year, they named him Tad, but his actual real name was Tyrone.
Okay, brother T. Uh, and because of that, Tom, what happened with brother T? That it was the same thing with the pharaohs that we've mummies that we've found. They've gone back now and began to extract DNA from the mummies, from the pharaoh mummies. And Tom, once again, big shock because I've never ever seen any pharaoh. You talking about an African nation, Egypt, surrounded by Libya and Sudan and Kenya, Ethiopia, and surrounded by all these black folks, but somehow all of the pharaohs end up white. Well, until we done the DNA test, Tom, and come to find out that none of these pharaohs were white.
Right, and if you've been reading books like the Introduction to African Civilization, if you read Count Volney, if you read George G.M. James, they will tell you all this. But unfortunately, Jimmy, because they didn't come from the Harvards and the Yales, and they weren't coming from the credible universities. I mean, they were pretty much pushed over to the side and seen as quack historians, not really credible of any real truth, Jimmy. But I mean, if you have been following history in a broader sense, most folks already know this. We understand that a lot of this is ignored in academia because we know that folks, and we've talked about this before, when it comes to the art of war, those who typically win wars take over history.
Well, Tom, they have taken it over on a grand scale and tipped it in their favor. And I'm not talking about to any one white person. We're talking about group, as an entity. We all know some really good, decent white people. So it's not to vilify white people, but it does seem that as a group, they seem to have this insipid need, Tom, to make themselves relevant and across the board and steal the identity of and I think they know that the message that they put out there is not true. The other thing, Tom, if we go back to the earliest fossils that we can find, I think was Lucy, and that this was Leakey who found these, I believe, by about Lake Victoria in Africa.
Yes.
2.5 million years, Tom. The earliest humanoids that we can find, Homo erectus, most of them is. I think over the course of time, we've discovered 21 human species, but only one have survived. And of course, that's Homo sapiens, which is what we are,
Homo
which popped into
sapiens
the
sapiens.
record. Homo sapiens sapiens, yeah, about 250,000 years ago. Some say 200,000, some say three. We're gonna cut the baby in half and say 250. But Tom, the records of white people, as we identify them today, only appear into the fossil records 7,000 years ago.
Correct.
White people have not been around for human evolution that long. They weren't even there in the transition from other species to be wiped out by the Homo sapiens. All of the Pekins and Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals and the Dovians and all these other humanoid species that got wiped out by Homo sapiens. White people were not involved in that process at all, Tom. All of the color variations you see today. So I had to take a look at how we measure and how the melanin works in our skin. And did you know, Tom, that actually the lighter your skin, as a process of evolution, kind of indicates I'm not gonna say a sickness, but a body that's not totally healthy.
Right.
That when the body becomes lighter in skin color, it's to let more sunlight in because your body is sick and you need the vitamin D. If you get enough vitamin D from your
Correct.
diet, then normally melanin will darken your skin to protect you from the UV rays of the
Correct.
sun. But when you're not fully healthy, when you don't have enough vitamin D to stay healthy, then your body has to take other measures, which is just the opposite. It has to lighten your skin up so more sunlight can get in, so more vitamin D can be formed, so you can live. So
You're correct. And so, for those who have melanin, they're able to process the ultraviolet rays from the sun and absorb that. And of course, the form that you talked about earlier is what we call an albinism, or what we would call
right, we just don't have any.
And so those sun rays reflect from the skin as opposed to absorb and process the skin tone as well. And of course, as we also know that, white skin is a recessive trait. We know this if we were paying attention in biology or physiology, that out of black skin, you can get or produce every color out of black skin.
Yes, you can.
Out of white
White,
skin,
Asian, Indian, every color variation.
every color. But out of course, white skin, you can only produce white skin. So it, of course, is common, if you know anything about science, that black folks can produce every possible color there is.
Well, Tom, I mean, that's just more evidence that the black man and the black woman is the mother and father to humanity. And of course, the Bible tells you to honor thy mother and your father so your days may be long. But the black man and the black woman, Tom, are the low man and woman on the totem pole. For rather than being elevated and celebrated by this planet, we're the last to the table. We're the last to benefit from things, and we struggle pretty much across the board when it shouldn't be that way. And somehow the imposters are celebrated, and they have really, Tom, positioned themselves to be thought of as that we're really the original people. Hitler was looking for this missing link to find Aryan fossils that were older, so he can prove that white people came first. And still, no matter all the mountain evidence that's out there, what are our universities in the science and that discipline still looking for? That missing link. Not a missing link to black people, because we already have that. We're looking for the missing link that ties white people to the original humans and primates and Homo erectus, and hopefully, in their eyes, they can find some link that shows that Homo sapiens actually came from white people. Oh, that would be the coup de grace, huh?
Well, Jimmy, I mean, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, being on the totem pole, and really that is a matter of warfare and power. And with Africans, black people, or what we call Africans, which was a name that was created by a European based upon a historical figure with the last name of Africanus, who was white. But of course,
Hold on, Tom. Whoa. You got to repeat that one, man. You try to sneak that one in. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Africa was named Africa based upon a European, I believe it was Leo Africanus. And that is where most what we call Africa today came from. A European. It was otherwise named Africa based upon a man named Leo Africanus. And on top of that, if you look at the 54 African countries, many of those African countries were named after white people. For instance, what used to be called Rhodesia at one point in time was based upon, and I forgot the man's first name, but his name was Rhodes. Of course, that country has been renamed. But a lot of the African countries were named after European people, which is kind of co-opting ownership of many of the countries in Africa. And if we look at it historically, Jimmy, before it was separated, sliced and diced, in the Berlin Conference in 1884 and 1885, those 54 countries did not exist in that form. Africa, or what we call Africa, was more of a holistic body of land. If we think of Sudan, if we think of what we call Egypt, which was not Egypt at that point in time, if we think of Ethiopia, that was a much larger landmass of what we know now as Ethiopia, what we know now as Egypt. Most of that was carved out by Europeans and their desire to co-opt and rape the land of its human capital and, of course, its mineral capital in order to build wealth for their countries who were struggling during the Dark Ages. The one advantage that they had, of course, was gunpowder and weapons of war. And with Africans being the first and original people, they were people of God. They were peaceful people. They had everything that they needed.
So greed didn't exist the way it did with the Europeans.
Exactly. They were, Europeans, of course, leveraged weaponry, gunpowder, and weapons of war in order to take what they wanted, as opposed to negotiate and trade for what they desired. Of course, our ancestors had everything that they needed because it was, of course, endowed by God. And so they didn't have a need, not that they didn't have skirmishes or fights, but they didn't have a need to kill each other over minerals, over land, over agriculture, because they had everything they needed.
That's what happens when there's a scarcity. Food, water, fuel, natural minerals, resources. Yeah, when you have plenty, you don't have to fight for it.
Exactly.
When you don't have very much of it, yeah, you got to pack up the army and start hitting the road and go find it.
Absolutely.
So Tom, not only are we talking, you allowed someone to come in, carve your continent up, name countries after themselves, steal your history, your identity, further add to the indignation by putting you in slavery in some periods of time to serve Europe and the Americas. Tom, I don't know if any group of people can survive such an onslaught. And it continues to happen. It's not like it happened and everybody packed up and walked away and just said bygones. It is still happening.
Yes, I would agree, Jimmy. And I mean, if you look at the big picture, whether we're talking about the continent of what we now call Africa, Whether you even look at the smaller island of Haiti, which is right off of the coast of Florida, which is a island full of Africans that, of course, is being controlled by the United States, France, and Canada to a certain degree. You're looking at the same thing, and that is access to resources that generates wealth, that, of course, reinforces power, that generates high military that allows them to continue to reinforce that power on people who are not able to defend themselves.
Well, Tom, I just want to point out that this is not information that you're going to get from the Breakfast Club.
No, sir.
So, what's the solution, Tom? We're trying to do our little piece by bringing the information to those who watch our show live and stream it afterwards. But
I guess that depends on what specific problem when you say the solution, because there are a lot of problems. So what specific problem are we talking about the solution to? And by the way, why don't we do this as well? Because, of course, we have a lot of intelligent people, of course, in the chat line. We have
let's get to the chat line there.
We have Miss Dominique Vinings. We have Miss Carol. Who else do we have here? Well, yeah, Brother Frederick V. Roberts, Esquire, who is a historian in his own right. Of course, we also have historian Brother Ed Gray as well, the commish. Shout out to the commish radio show. It was a historian as well. So let's kind of talk about the issues for another 10 minutes until our next music contest, and talk about what we're trying to resolve, and then get some feedback and talk about the solutions.
Well, first, Tom, the first issue is people need to be aware that this fraud exists, that everything you think you know about world history, much of it has been a lie. And so the only way to undo that lie is to bring awareness, is to bring the truth to the forefront. And so to me, that's one of the first things. So we may have to change the way we educate, at least in our homes and our schools that we control.
Yeah, Jimmy, and part of that comes from controlling your own destiny, which means controlling your institutions, which also means controlling your history, controlling education, being able to, as trying to think which historian. Oh, Professor James Smalls said, being able to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for your own people. If that belongs to somebody else, the ability to do that, then you have very little leverage in terms of being able to control anything. But to your point, it starts with being able to re-educate. In the words of Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation, the primal book, Miseducation of the Negro, you have to take ownership of your own education. You have to take ownership of your own history. And so even that seminal classic, The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, is a good book. But you have to be the owner of your own knowledge base and your own history.
Right. And in every category, good or bad, that we can measure, people of African descent are number one in those categories. The tallest, the shortest, the fastest, the slowest, the smartest, and the dumbest. So, like you said, you can't take the original. You can take the original and water it down, but you can't take watered down folks and somehow get back to the original. So it just doesn't work that way. And so we need to understand our rightful place, Tom, in the hierarchy. We're not at the bottom of this process, of this ladder. We should be at the top, being praised for who and what we are, but that doesn't happen, and it's only going to happen, Tom, when people understand their rightful place. And right now, too many of our folks do not understand their rightful place, so we've allowed other groups of people to step in and fill the void with their version.
Yes, Jimmy, and actually, Miss Carol has a recommendation down here based upon your question. Is there's learn your actual history, your own history, not just what other people tell you,
Sure.
which that comes in several different layers. And I think that is a very provocative statement she's making, because we are now at a day and age where even our younger generation, you have to be very careful, because you have access to mass media. For them, it is social media. So you cannot take the truth as to what you see on social media. For instance, in our generation, that we took as truth, based upon what we saw on television or what we saw
Right.
on the movies. A lot of people during our earlier years, we looked at what was on the movies, we looked at what was on the television, and we would consider that to be the gospel.
That's
But you
true,
have
Tom.
to you have to actually own your own education, own your own history, in addition to the credentials that you're getting in primary education and in higher education, so that you can get what we call these JOBSs, so that we can earn a living, so we can take care of ourselves and our families.
And once again, we're not anti-white here. We're not anti anything here. We're just pro-truth. And there's nothing wrong with sharing and being able to distribute the truth. Um, Tom, we have a few minutes left before we get to
About
our
five.
last segment in our next music history. So the last 5 minutes that we have left, do we have any comments in the chat line? Any questions from there? This is your time, people.
Yep. Let's hear it on the chat line. And what are your thoughts in terms of, what do we do with where we are? Because we have to look at this, and I'll put this very simply. We have about 1.4 billion people on the continent of Africa at a minimum. 1.4 billion Black African people. On the most part, they are controlled by white European countries. Their economy, their politics, their ability to be able to earn a living, and their wealth is controlled by European countries, including the United States of America. Now, we have somewhere in the range of 40 plus million people, Black people, African people in the United States, including what some call both African and African Americans. Of course, Malcolm X would say we're all Africans. Just because you put kittens in the oven don't make them biscuits. But we have 40 million plus people in the United States. Of course, the economy is controlled by, if you look at the Congress, they don't look like us on the most part. You look at even more, 50 plus million people in Brazil, I think, sixth largest country of Africans by population when you get out of the African continent. So if you look at the body politic of African people globally, you have the African continent, you have the Caribbean countries. But even if you look at Jimmy, Barbados, Jamaica, Bahamas, who are their politics controlled by?
By white people.
Exactly.
Going back over, not even local white people, Tom. Many
Correct.
of them are controlled by part of Great Britain, the Great British Empire. Still,
So, from my perspective, still waiting on anybody who wants to chime in on the chat line. Number one, you have to control your institutions. As we've talked about, Jimmy, you've got to stop giving your economy and your power away to other people. And you have to, in essence, literally rotate all of your economic power and therefore all of your political power and thereafter your military power.
Tom, okay, let's start with there. What are these school boards in black, majority black and brown school districts doing? What are they doing? I mean, what books are you buying to teach history with? Do you not think that the kids would be a little bit more excited if they knew the truth about who they are, rather
I
than
can
open
guarantee you it's not this book. I can guarantee you it's not this book.
every history book, every world history book they open up is about white people, unless you're talking about slavery or civil rights. Otherwise, every image in there is white. And Tom, we can't let that continue to happen. So at some point, like you said, some of these school boards have to accept responsibility to being part of the solution and stop being part of the problem. And being part of the solution is ordering history books that are more truthful in nature.
Gotcha. I've got a comment here from our good friend Uncle Asar. As minimum, Malcolm said, change your mindset, then change your philosophy. Then you change your thinking patterns, your behaviors then change. Then you can get into some real action. It begins with reading and reconnecting with your true roots to find out who you are. He says, once you change your philosophy, you change your thought patterns, etc., going and going. Brazil is the largest population of African people outside of the African continent. Nigeria, of course, Nigerian is the largest population of black people on the African continent in the country. So it's literally Nigeria, then Brazil. I think there may be a couple of more countries between Nigeria and Brazil, but not too far behind.
Well, Tom, and black people in Brazil are still catching hell.
Correct.
You know, and unfortunately, far too many people have bought into white is right, and I mean, they still have this effort of trying to marry their dark-skinned sisters to European white people so they can get lighter shade kids, grandkids as a process. So black skin is still looked down upon. With all those black people in Brazil, still black folks there are catching hell. And not just there, but a lot of other countries, even our southern neighbors to the south of us, Mexico. Black folks catching hell down. Cuba, same thing. We just don't hear about a lot of this, but it still exists worse than what it is here in America.
Yep, that is true, Jimmy. And to that earlier point, it is Nigeria, then Egypt. But I guess some of those Egyptians don't consider themselves to be black African anyway. And then you may have, I think, one or two more countries before you get to Brazil. But at the end of the day, Jimmy, you have to control your institutions. Brother Roberts, education is the key, and re-education of our people, because there are some, no matter how much you try, they will say you've got to be crazy or kidding.
And that's sad. That is sad.
So
okay.
But it starts with, I would agree, education, but not being dependent on other folks to control your education and your consciousness and your identity, and then controlling your institutions. Because, you know, at the end of the day, if you don't control your own institutions, whatever they may look like, whether you're talking about your economy, educational institutions, your ability to be able to feed and clothe yourselves, otherwise business institutions that create jobs for your own, not being dependent on other people for jobs, then what else is there? That has to be
found. About the 104 HBCUs that exist. What are they teaching? I mean, I didn't attend the HBCU, but
they're teaching what their controllers. They're teaching what their controllers tell them to teach.
Okay. Well, that answers that then.
And I'm not okay. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that our HBCUs they are a lot more comprehensive in teaching the identity of their constituents, predominantly African Americans, Black Americans, in addition to their diverse populations. They're going to be a lot more comprehensive because socially and culturally they were targeted, because they were built to educate Black children, because of course they didn't want Black children in white institutions. And so that is a part of their identity. But that always does come with some ties, because at the end of the day, when you're dependent on some other group for your money, they're going to dictate what you are going to teach, what you're going to program.
Well, Tom, that's true. And that's why we continue to push for graduates. And even if you didn't go to an HBCU, if you have a few dollars that you can donate to their endowment funds, you know, it doesn't have to be millions like a Bill Cosby, but man, if you just have $25, I'm sure they'll appreciate it. Every dollar counts to help them gain some independence, to free themselves from the system. So, Tom, we have one more segment. We got to get to sports. Very good discussion. And for folks out there, like I said, if there's something you want us to discuss, research, investigate, don't be afraid to share. Ask the question, and we'll certainly look it up for you and put it on the docket. So, Tom, let's play our second Black History song, and then we're going to move into sports. And then I'm going to run from the set because our beloved Mavs are playing. So, and I want to go check the game.
And we got to spend a couple of minutes on the NBA Finals before we drop. So,
yes. So the rules are the same. We're going to play a song. The first one to get the artist, the name of the artist, and the name of the song correct will get 1 point. And if you're fast enough, hey, you may be like Carol, be awarded 2 points because you got both of them correct before anyone else. And Tom is our judge who's sitting there watching and monitoring the chat line. This is a individual. So the other person was a group. So this is an individual. You should know this person. So here we go. Get your fingers ready.
With you, I'll never let you go. I look into your eyes, and now I know. Now I know.
All right. Okay. Looks like Brother Saw got Whitney Houston.
Okay, Brother Sar in the house. Representing for the men.
All right. And I'm going to go ahead and credit. He spelled do wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and give him credit for where the Broken Hearts goes. He got in just before Miss Carol on the name of the song. So actually, Sar gets 2 on this one. So Miss Carol got 2 on the first song by TLC, and Uncle Asar got 2 on the second song. Miss Carol came in a very, very close second. Jai James, of course, had Whitney Houston. Miss Celia Reese, Whitney Houston. Audrey K, of course, got the name and the artist correct. So,
okay.
All right, so Miss Carol got 2 and Uncle Asar got 2. So they are tied on this show. However, if we look at the running total and I added everything up, it looks like Uncle Asar, thus far, cumulative, is in first place. It looks like Miss Carol is in second place overall, and Miss Tanya is in third place overall in the total count.
Wow, okay. Tight race.
Yep, yes it is. So all right, Jimmy, we have got about 10 minutes left. So we're going to go ahead and transition to our sports segment for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to let Jimmy go back and watch his beloved Mavericks in the NBA Finals.
Yes, as we put the first bricks in place to win another championship.
They ain't got a lot of bricklaying to do, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, it all starts with the first one. So if you don't get that first one laid, then you don't have a chance. But yeah, Tom, I think Porzingis, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Is he out today? Is he playing?
He is out. They ruled him out for his game. He has some type of tendon damage, and so he is out for this game. They've basically been calling him day to day. They ruled him out a couple of hours prior to the game, which actually probably gives the Mavericks a little bit more leverage on that side because, of course, he is their number one rim protector.
Oh, yeah. At 7'3", you don't even have to jump sometimes. But this is why the Mavs got rid of him, Tom, when he played here. His ass was always hurt. He was off the floor more than he was on the floor. So, but that becomes Boston's problem, not ours.
Yep, this is true. However, he definitely did help on the offensive and defensive side in game 1 and game 2. So if he gives them a couple of good games, Jimmy, we will see what happens. But he was absolutely a difference maker in game 1. 20 points in game 1, Jimmy.
Yeah, what he did in game 1 was unbelievable. Just about everything he threw up went in. He'll never have another game like that in the next couple of years. So, but every now and then people have those unbelievable games, and he just happened to have one. But then when your team is blowing the other team out, it's a lot easier to have one of those games because there's no pressure on you.
That is true. So, Kristaps Porzingis, I'm not exactly sure what country he comes from, Jimmy, but of course the Mavericks got rid of him.
The same country as Luka.
Okay, no, I did not know that. But I think the Mavericks got rid of him a couple of years ago. And, I think he's been to a couple of teams before getting to Boston. We'll see what happens for the rest of this series. But if we look at the series as a whole, of course, the Boston Celtics are up 2-0. Jimmy, it was a blowout in game 1, a little bit closer in game 2. This is what I find interesting about this series thus far. I am not a regular season NBA watching guy. I started watching in the playoffs. I just can't keep up with 82 games, Jimmy. So I really started kind of monitoring things. And I think this is the earliest I've ever started watching a series intently on the in the first round. And I wasn't even watching Boston then, but I'll tell you what, really the knock against Boston coming into this series is that every team that they played in the playoffs had their major player who was either injured or out. So as a result, they didn't really give them that much of a chance, seeing what the Mavericks had done in the West. But when you look at this team now, Jimmy, they are solid offensive and defensive side of the court. I mean,
they're a good team. They're well balanced. They have a good offense, good defense. They really play some good defense.
Number 2 defense in the league, Jimmy. Number 2 defense in the league. Behind Minnesota.
So here's the thing, though. The Mavericks don't have the bench that Boston have.
They don't.
Boston has a better bench. Oklahoma had a better bench. I can even probably say the LA Clippers had a better bench than the Mavericks. But here's what the Mavericks have. The Mavericks have 6 core players. I call them the Big Six. 2 of those are, Gafford and Blake Lively play the center position. When those 2 guys are playing their ball, they average a triple-double in points, in scoring, rebound, and block shots. And then when you look at the next 2, which is Jones Jr. and DJ Washington, who we picked up in a trade, Tom, we got to get at least 12 to 15 points from each one of those. Those 2 guys got to pump in 30. And then the big 2, which is Kyrie and Luka, those guys got to get us 60. So anytime we get the 60-30 and then whatever the centers dump in, the Mavs are pretty much unbeatable at that point. I mean, they have rolled through.
And that has not been happening.
Right. And now, but you notice that whenever the Big Six don't come through, no matter who it is, it could be Kyrie, it could be Jones Jr., it could be DJ, maybe the centers are struggling like they have the first 2 games. Tom, it's not pretty when the Big Six don't come through. And what irks me is that our coach seems to be trying to get production out of the scrub patrol. To me, that's Hardaway Jr., that's Axum, that's Green, that's Hardy. I mean, these are young guys, I understand, but those guys are not going to win you a championship, Tom. They are not going to rescue you. They're not going to save you. All they're going to do is give you a few minutes in order to rest up a starter. But the Big Six have to come through. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And Jason Kidd should be emphasizing that more to his team, that the Mavs are going to live or die on the Big Six, not the guys coming off the bench, not the scrub patrol. Those guys have no responsibility here. They're not going to win the game for us. They're not going to bail us out. It's going to be y'all 6 that have to get it done. And if you can't get it done, then we're not going to win this series, period. And so he needs to publicly, I think, stop coming out talking about trying to get more out of Hardaway Jr. Hardaway Jr. hadn't even played in 2 series. He's played so bad in the playoffs against the Clippers that I don't even think he was in the rotation against Minnesota or OKC. I'm not even sure he played. And how's a guy that can't even get in those games going to bail you out now? He can't. Green, Axum, Green and Hardy are young players. Axum, I'm not even sure why he's on the team. They picked him up off I think he was out of basketball. And he was out of basketball for a reason, as far as I'm concerned. The guy can't play. He can't shoot. So, and then these are the guys that you think are going to somehow kind of step in and save the series. It's not going to happen, Tom.
This is where I think the Mavericks have a problem. One, hopefully that changes tonight, but Kyrie Irving has not had a Kyrie Irving series thus far. When you look at what he was doing in Minnesota, when he was looking at what he was doing with the Clippers, he was straight balling. The first 2 games, he was the 3rd best player offensively on the court next to, I believe, Hardaway. And you got to have your big two, to your point, producing and generating at least 60 points combined.
30 each,
You know,
some at minimum. Yes.
the X factor, of course, was Porzingis in both games. Nobody expected him to come out doing what he did, coming off, of course, an injury. You know, they were hoping maybe they can get him a couple of buckets and sit there and protect the rim.
He was dunking on folks, shooting over folks, shooting threes. I'm like,
Exactly.
God, everything he threw up can go in.
And this is the other thing that the Mavericks did not anticipate. Boston Celtics can play them one-on-one. They don't have to double Luka. Luka's going to get his points, period. He's going to get his points, but they don't double Luka. They don't double Kyrie. Drew Holiday actually scored more points than anybody on the Celtics team in game 2. And so the reality of it is when you look at their players, you got Jaylen Brown, who has been the best player, on the Celtics squad thus far. Jason Tatum hasn't even had a good game yet in this series. You got Drew Holiday, who's balling on both sides and was the number 1 point scorer in game 2. You're not going to really get that many points out of Al Horford, but he is a solid defensive player, and he'll maybe get you 8 or so points. But what they've been doing is they've been consistently, matter of fact, 6 players on the Boston Celtics teams have been in double digits throughout these 2 games.
And that used to be the Mavericks. That was our success. Having 6 players pretty much in double digits. They don't have to score 20 or 30, but you need them to be scoring points consistently. But you need your big 2 to come through.
And on top of that, Jimmy, the reason that they have not been scoring double digits across the board, guess what? The Boston Celtics have been stopping assists. And so when you look at the assist totals for both Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, they have shut down the assists. They have shut down those lob dunks to Gabbert.
Yeah, those coming on alley-oops and lob dunks.
Exactly. They've been shutting that down, Jimmy.
But when you got a guy 7'3", he can cause a problem and throw a monkey wrench into that engine.
This is the most complete team that the Mavericks have seen all year, at least in the playoffs, so to speak. And, if they can't get those assists, and the other thing, Jimmy, 3 points, they have been almost non-existent for the Mavericks.
Yeah, there has been kind of a bit of a lid on that basket, and they are well-produced, well-shooting 3-point team. But, Tom, that's when things are going good, when there's not a whole lot of pressure on you. And then that's when the Square Patrol are not taking a bunch of your 3-point shots. But when they're in the game, when Axum's in the game, Green, those kind of guys, Hardy's okay. I don't mind Hardy because he does have he's shown some great potential to be able to penetrate, and he can shoot the 3. But Green can shoot it also from time to time. Axum, he shouldn't even be allowed to touch the basketball. So I'm not even sure why he's still on the team. But we'll see how it goes tonight, Tom. I hope they don't go down 0-3 because at that point it's pretty much over.
Exactly.
I would like to see a lot more basketball. So we got 3 games at home. We need to win at least 2 of them to stay competitive. It'd be nice if we won all 3, but we're going to start with the one tonight. And if anyone's out there watching the game, please don't reveal the score because I'm getting ready to say goodbye, run to the media room and turn the game on and start watching. So
I dare say this. I know this may be a provocative statement. I dare say this. If the Mavericks had not gotten rid of or were to have kept Jalen Brunson, who is now with the New York Knicks.
Oh, no, it would be all over, Tom. With this team and Brunson, scoring wouldn't even be an issue.
Exactly. And that is my point, because what he does, he's not the biggest guy on the court, but he makes everything collapse. And then he kicks out the assists. This would be a different series if they had Luka and Jalen Brunson right now.
Sure. So anyway, with that being said, Tom, I'm going to check out. So I'll give you the last word before we go to our theme song and call it a night.
All right, folks, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. If you haven't done so already, of course, please like tonight's show. of course, share this information with somebody else. So, of course, they can be the most intelligent person in their community and learn something about what we've got to do within I would say, the next 10 years. I don't even know if we have 10
Definitely.
years to start turning the corner on what we talked about a little bit earlier today. And, of course, make sure you put on your radar, of course, next week, especially for those in the South and Texas in particular, we have got Juneteenth coming up. So we wish everybody a happy Juneteenth week next week as well. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.